What up, y'all? It's your boy, old man, aka O the Dread, and it looks like I done pissed some people off. I dropped a video a few days ago on Tariq Nasheed, and it looks like the whole FBA is upset. So I want to go through some of the comments on that video. I want to reiterate some of my points. I want to clarify my stance. I want to make sure that you guys understand what I agree with and what I don't agree with. And I'm going to also double down on a few things. So before we do that, if you guys are into long form content, I do investigative commentary exposing the charlatans, grifters, and industry plants exploiting our culture. I break down the downfalls of public figures through deep dive video essays, focusing on the psychology of influence, historical revisionism, and the business of selling out. So if that sounds like something you'd be into, please make sure you smash that like button, hit that subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't miss my weekly drops. And yeah, let's get into these comments real quick. The first comment we have here says, that claim doesn't make a 50% split on who created hip hop. Hip hop spans back decades in black culture, churches, small music gatherings, on video back in the 40s. That ends the debate. Well, unfortunately, my friend, that does not end the debate. And the debate is not that hip hop doesn't span back that far. Elements of hip hop span back that far, and that's something we're gonna get to in a second. Hip hop was coined in was the first hip hop jam is recognized in 1973 at 1520 Cedric Avenue, and that party was thrown by Kool Herc. But there are elements, all of the elements of hip hop pre-exist hip hop, and like I said, we'll get to that in a second. Africans and Latinos never helped us. That's categorically false. I'm gonna also address that in a second. Bro, you missed the point on mic check. It's not that others didn't participate in the creation. You're missing the point. There's no Puerto Rican influence in the beginning of rap. That's not the argument. See, people like to straw man these arguments and turn them into things that they're not. So I've never heard anybody say that there's Puerto Rican influence in hip hop, except for something that Caz mentioned in an interview that I'm going to show you guys in a second, where he says that hip hop does borrow from everything, including Latin culture. So we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, where's the controversy? Latinos didn't create hip hop. I don't know of anybody who ever said that Latinos created hip hop. That's definitely not something that I said in my video. So I'm not sure where he picked that up from. But starting back up, in regards to the 50-50, the 50% statement. I disagree that hip hop was 50-50. I know that there was a lot of discourse around Fat Joe saying that hip hop was a 50-50 Puerto Rican and Black American creation. And that's false, right? Because it couldn't have been if the very first hip hop jam was thrown by a Jamaican, right? So that's not how 50-50 works. So we're going to talk about how I feel about the breakdown and the complexity of the fabric of hip hop culture in a bit as well. So the points that I have an issue with directly with Tariq's statements were what I put in the video. So I'll play that again.
They were not b-boying then, they came later. All of that helping to create it, that's a lie.
Just guessed.
Is we're not accepting lies. Number one, there was no Puerto Rican and Black creating hip hop 50-50. That's a lie. Puerto Ricans were.
I already told you guys, I agreed. It wasn't Puerto Ricans and Blacks creating hip hop 50-50. So if that is in fact, and that is in fact what Fat Joe said, and I should have been clearer about reiterating or iterating the fact that I didn't agree with Fat Joe saying that hip hop was 50-50.
Were not there in the beginning. Helping to create hip hop, that's a lie. Helping to create hip hop, the Puerto Ricans were not there in the beginning. Helping to create hip hop, that's a lie.
Puerto Ricans were not there in the beginning helping to create hip hop. That's a lie. That's interesting because he must not have ever heard of Charlie Chase and the history of Cold Crush, which I find hard to believe because Cold Crush includes somebody who he had on his Mic Check documentary, Grandmaster Caz, who I mentioned earlier. We're going to get to an interview of his where he speaks on the Latin influence or the Latin contribution to hip hop. But first, we'll talk about the hip hop's first Puerto Rican DJ documented. His name is Charlie Chase. So in this article, he talks about how he started DJing around 75, 76. Now, the thing is that hip hop was coined and brought together when all the elements of hip hop was brought together in the Park Jam in 1973 in 1520 Sedgwick Avenue. That was when hip hop was given its birth date. So within the first few years of hip hop's initial inception, we have DJ Charlie Chase contributing as the first Puerto Rican DJ. So I'm gonna give you a real quick snippet of Charlie Chase talking about his involvement in the beginning of hip hop.
Two other versions before the final version that you know now, the Cold Crush, right?
And you're one of the founding members of
Yes, me and Tony Tone created the crew. So Tony Tone, I had met Tony Tone because one of the MCs, which was RC and my crew, went to South Bronx High School. Tony went to South Bronx High School. RC told him about me, yo, this DJ is nice, this Puerto Rican is nice on the 1 and 2s. Tony was looking to create a group. Tony was with Breakout. So he told RC, yo, tell him I want to meet him. He said, sure. I said, sure, bring him by. I met Tony Tone. So Tony Tone had this vision to create a crew. He came on with me and we were trying to work things out, you know, because he had ideas, I had ideas, but I already had a crew with MCs, right? So the crew that I had at the time with the MCs.
I need to see the flyer.
I'm showing you, this is a popular.
Show it to this camera or whatever you want to.
Okay, this was to show you, if you see the top of the flyer, right, it says Discotheque Productions. That was the company that we had. Me, Tom, and Jerry had that company, Discotheque Productions.
Discotheque Productions, right. And Kevin Epps presents DJ Charlie Chase, DJ Tony Tone, DJ.
Look at the MCs. Read them. The MCs that were down with me was Donna Rock and Whip Whip.
Right.
Wow.
They were Fantastic Five. They were with me. They were Caz's MCs. They got a lot of MCs left Caz and then somehow got hooked up with me. So Donna and Whip came with me. Now this was pre-Cold Crush, right? So then we decided that we were, Tony Tone and I, Tony Tone was the one who came up with the name, the Cold Crush. And I remember when he walked to me and he said, I was at this pinball spot across the street from my house.
So without playing the whole entire video, you can clearly see that Charlie Chase was a contributing member, a Puerto Rican, during the early days of hip hop. Let's hear Grandmaster Caz really quickly talk about what was going on in the beginning as well.
Then, speaking rhythmically, the music is not new. Why is there such a confusion on who started this? We hear Black Americans, FBA, Jamaicans, and Puerto Ricans, and everyone's fighting to say we were there or we started it. But listening to you talk, it damn near don't sound like anybody got a claim.
Here's what I can say.
And I'm not like one.
He's talking, it sound like niggas got a claim to me. No, here's what I can say. Here's what I say. If anything, if anybody has a claim, you know what I mean? Of course, I mean, black people, you know, hip hop is a derivative of black culture, but black culture.
I want to make something very clear. The sound of hip hop and the elements that collectively make up hip hop are foundationally Black American art forms. That is 100% true. And I want to talk about a couple of things later on how those things are derivative, obviously, from Africa and African culture, and how Puerto Ricans and Afro-Latinos share African culture, which led to our gravitation to hip hop. But we'll talk about that in a second.
Culture is a derivative of a lot of different things. Just like hip hop is. Hip hop takes and borrows from things from every fucking
jazz.
Okay, from jazz, from disco to Latin to you know what I mean? And a lot of
but your description is based on everything else though. Everything else takes from somewhere else.
Yeah, I've always said hip hop didn't invent anything. Hip hop reinvented everything.
But when you say jazz music, there's a derivative of this, and this. But they never say this is their culture or take the claim. Everybody wants to claim this.
That's something else.
Everybody wants hip hop.
Let me tell you what happened. The 50th anniversary of hip hop was coming around, okay? And everybody is, you know, looking for recognition. All these events is happening, going on. Yo, I'm so-and-so. I used to do that. You know, I should be on this, and I should be here, and I should do this, and I should. So there was a lot of that leading up. And then not just the shows or the venues, but just, you know, social media, just, you know, things that were going, books, documentaries, you know, all about hip hop.
I was there for the 50th anniversary.
But everybody didn't get their mention. Everybody didn't get their fair mention. And at some point, the Latino involvement in hip hop question came up, and that became a big, you know what I mean, explosion of controversy. And then it's like, you know, what percentage did Latinos play in hip hop? Is it black? Is it Puerto Rican? Was Puerto Rican? You know what I mean? That became a bigger issue. Like I said, half the time you could have been talking to a Puerto Rican and didn't even fucking know it because he's just as black as you. You could have been talking to a Jamaican and didn't know he was Jamaican till you went to his fucking house and heard his parents speak. Yeah. So as far as we know, we all fucking black. You know what I mean? I think
that's something I want to talk about too. We have Tariq Nasheed telling us what was going on in the Bronx and what was going on in New York City. Tariq Nasheed is not from here. Tariq Nasheed builds narratives, uses lead-in questions to get people to say things that confirm his bias. You just heard it from Grandmaster Caz, and Grandmaster Caz was in the Mic Check documentary.
That's the best answer right there.
You understand what I'm saying? That's I understand it is we all black. I don't know if you're Trinidadian. I don't know you come from Belize. I don't know if you're from Colombia. You know what I mean?
We all dark skinned.
And if you look at who adapted to the natural culture, that was going on. Who adapted to what? Now, you got blacks and Puerto Ricans all living together. You got Jamaicans, you got, Italians, all right, but predominantly blacks and Puerto Ricans living together, right? Now, go to a hip hop jam, right? How many Puerto Ricans you gonna see in there?
How many was in there? You
A
talking?
lot.
A lot of Puerto
Go
Ricans.
to a
How
Puerto
many?
Rican jam. Go to a
Oh, so Puerto Ricans were not participating, right? So let's go back to what Tariq said real quick.
There were no Puerto Ricans rapping in the early 70s or before. If they say they were, that's a lie. They were not DJing then, that's a lie. They were not b-boying then, they came later. All of that is a lie to say they were.
He uses Fat Joe to hide the truth because
Oh, okay. So he's calling Grandmaster Caz a liar.
to a salsa jam or something like that.
Was niggas
How
in
many
there?
black people you gonna see
Wasn't
in
in
that?
there? None.
So who
Just to
None.
reiterate his point real quick.
adapted to whose culture? A salsa jam or something like that.
Was niggas
How
in
many
there?
black people you gonna see?
But what he's saying is that you would see Puerto Ricans at hip hop jams and you wouldn't see black folks at like salsa parties and things like that, which is true. And there's a reason why Puerto Ricans would gravitate towards naturally African sounding music. We'll get to that in a second. So we already have that hip hop was not a 50-50 split between any two groups. We already have that Puerto Ricans were DJing and were involved and collectively contributing to hip hop from the pretty close to the beginning. I mean, if 73 is the beginning of hip hop jams and park jams and actually coining the term hip hop, which actually came a few years later, maybe a couple years later when Lovebug Starsky coined the term hip hop. That's for another video. I have a video lined up that's gonna break down the entire comprehensive history of hip hop, starting way back from Pigmeat Markham all the way in 1967 with the mention of African griots. We'll get there. So we've already refuted that there weren't any Puerto Ricans contributing. And so this has been my main point from the jump. Tariq Nasheed uses this rhetoric that there's no allies, that black folks don't have no allies, that Puerto Ricans are not part of the same struggle. So let's talk about that really quickly. We have this article here from a woman named Sonia Lee. She wrote a book called Building a Latino Civil Rights Movement, Puerto Ricans, African Americans in the Pursuit of Racial Justice. Well, in this interview about this book, she speaks about the relations between blacks and Puerto Ricans throughout the 60s and into the 70s. We have here a picture of Puerto Rican members, black and Puerto Rican members of Local 10 before the public hearing at the New York State Commission for Human Rights. And underneath this photo, she says the war on poverty and the Black Freedom Movement provided vital organizing spaces for black and Puerto Ricans who became invested in each other's liberation. The war on poverty created a flexible ideological space in which Puerto Ricans could redefine their racial identity as an ethnic minority and political identity as a predominantly working class community. The Black Power movement inspired Puerto Rican activists to follow a similar model of political and cultural self-determination. Black and Puerto Rican coalitions dissolved in the 1970s as a result of external political repression and internal class divisions. White ethnic leaders attacked black and Puerto Rican nationalists, as reverse segregationists. Black and Puerto Rican activists lost their own internal sense of cohesion as class fractures within their own communities led them to lose their morale and mutual trust. So by the 1970s, by the time hip hop was starting, it was starting to become a divide between blacks and Puerto Ricans over politics and also colorism, which is something that plagues all black and brown communities of color when it comes to light and dark skin and white passing. Now, the reason that I brought up shortly after the comments by Tariq, the story of
because if
Yellow
Tariq
Benji,
told you about Yellow Benji, if he told you about the Ghetto Brothers, if he admitted that a Puerto Rican gang brokered the whole Avenue Peace meeting that allowed hip hop to breathe in the first place.
So Yellow Benji, like I said in the video, was part of the Ghetto Brothers who brokered the whole Avenue Peace Treaty. This was a foundational contributing factor to the landscape in which hip hop flourished. The Peace Treaty basically made it possible for people to be outside, DJ equipment to be plugged into light posts without there being violence. And, as you can see here, the unity of Puerto Ricans and blacks was established despite this divide that people talk about, which did bleed into neighborhoods. Definitely you saw light-skinned Puerto Ricans who didn't want to be identified as black and were trying to separate from their African ancestry, trying to keep their kids away from black people in the neighborhood. That was absolutely a thing. So multiple things can be true, right? But let's talk about what it means to be Afro-Latino or Afro-Puerto Rican specifically. Afro-Puerto Ricans are Puerto Ricans of full or partial sub-Saharan African origin, who are predominantly the descendants of slaves, freedmen, and free blacks, original to West and Central Africa. Oh yeah, there was another comment that I wanted to cover really quickly. Okay, bro, so tell me how you're helping the Black community without making a profit. Last time I checked, social media pays. You monetizing this? Well, the answer is no, because I'm still on the road to monetization. So no, I'm not monetizing this, my friend. Have you ever been to a museum? Yeah, many, my entire life. I live in New York City, where we have some of the greatest museums here. Expecting a handout or something for free down in someone else's name, but have no resume of your own to stand on. Okay, well, here's a picture of me in front of Bronx River Community Center on 174th Street, trying to rally for a community program to teach the youth in Bronx River the history of hip hop, including all 5 elements. So, oh, here's me again, marching through Brooklyn during this event with Busy Bee. And so I just wanted to come on really quickly and do this video and clarify some of my points. Just to reiterate, the sound that is hip hop has many elements that date back prior to 1973. Many of those elements were developed and created and perfected by Black foundational Americans. That is not even an argument here. My issue is with Tariq's divisive commentary and his divisive rhetoric. I think he preaches separatism, and I think the idea of delineation only serves to hurt us. See, the most beautiful thing about hip hop was the mantra that it was created on, which was peace, love, unity, and having fun. And when people like Tariq Nasheed come in and try to strong arm a narrative that preaches separatism, he's basically going directly against everything hip hop stands for. Hip hop is something that I pitched in my previous video about Fat Joe being a cultural chameleon who I believe he wears different cultural masks to serve his own personal goals, which is why I ended up even speaking about Tariq Nasheed, because I think that Fat Joe serves as a terrible example for a Latino in hip hop and gives Tariq Nasheed plenty of fuel to point at people like Fat Joe who make statements like hip hop was 50-50 when that wasn't the case, and then continue to spit this divisive rhetoric. But the idea of hip hop's irreducible complexity was stated in that video, and that if you think of something like a watch, if you start pulling the pieces out of a watch, the watch no longer functions. And to me, that's what hip hop is. Hip hop is a culmination of elements, many of those elements being, like I said, foundational Black American art forms, which have history that date back to Africa. And Puerto Ricans also have history that date back to Africa, which is why Puerto Ricans gravitate towards hip hop so naturally. So that's my argument. Hip hop is more than just the elements that make it up. Hip hop is not a monolith. Hip hop is irreducibly complex. It requires all of the contributions that it's had since its inception and since the very first Park Jam, when a Jamaican came and threw one of the biggest and most influential parties in the history of our culture, right here in the Bronx, where I'm at right now. So if any of that was missed or lost in the last video, then maybe that's on me, maybe that's on y'all. But hopefully this clarifies it. Make sure you subscribe. If you're into deep dives, I'm gonna keep putting these out every week. Make sure you check out my other video here. Make sure you check out my other video here. And like I say in every video, if you don't do nothing like that, if you don't even comment or nothing, at the very least, then be the person you'd like to meet. Peace.
Oh man, I'm about to pop out. And you know I brought the drop out.